Now, to keep things moving with easy items, we can go into the budget.
Tentative budget, Scott, going to present it?
Sure. Okay, included in your board packet is the tentative budget. The actuals were updated to 6/30/17, so I was able to get those in for everybody. I apologize for the late change to the assumptions page with it. I did not have the actuals reflected in the one that you received over the weekend, so that was updated this morning and sent back out on the assumptions page with it. Basically,
Can you said you still compared the numbers between the 2017 budget and 2018 budget, not the 2017 actual and the 2018 budget.
I have the actual of what is on the left-hand column on the assumptions,
No, but on the,
and then,
throughout the whole report, your comparison is between last year's budget and this year's budget, not
Yes.
last year's actual and this year's actual. And this year's, not last year's actual and the current present year's budget.
okay.
You compared budget to budget.
Yes.
You
Yes,
compare
budget to
actual
budget. We're on budget to budget.
So you have to give us another report that compares actual from last year to budget for this year, because that's the reality of what happens in life.
Well, I understand, but,
Okay.
you know, I also need to compare budget to budget to see where we came in, with what was the guesstimate was versus, you know, even though, I know what you're saying, you want to just look at actuals to what the budget is for
Right.
18.
Right.
And there again, like, I look at it where, okay, some things are gonna come in under, some are gonna come in over. Totally understand, but as far as.
Scott, in the
differential-
format, I think what he's asking for in the format, when you look at the budget, but we should probably go and get to that after you do your presentation. Why don't you go to start with your assumptions, or actually go a step further. Why don't you go to what the board is, you're asking the board to do tonight,
All right.
how much time they'll have.
All right, so what I'm asking the board to do today is approve the tentative budget in this form, and we have August and September to basically update anything that needs to be updated and look at different numbers that are out there. But what I'm asking the board to do tonight is to approve it in tentative form so that I can post it out there that this is the tentative budget that we're going to approve. I can put it out for public view from now until the September board meeting, so that if there is any questions on it, they can come to the district office and view it, make any comment on it. And this also gives a chance to look at any of the actuals and whatever the budget item are that are in the current one to make any adjustments or modifications. Staffing still isn't completely 100% done, so there may be some changes with it. Some of the state stuff still is up in the air, so I'll go through that, but like I said, I'm asking the board to adopt this tentative form, and then I can put it out there for 30 days for public view, post it in the paper, and then make any necessary changes, and then a final budget will be adopted in September.
So your comparison on page 108 of at least what I have in front of me is, and we're showing a tentative deficit coming through this year.
Mhm.
The primary driver of that is,
The biggest driver of that is the increase in certified staff salary per our collective bargaining for new board members. Pretty much teachers from year 1 through 30 are receiving a $3,800 flat dollar increase. And just to make it very simple, we basically have 100 staff members that will be receiving $3,800. So that right there is $380,000.
We want to check your math on that. Years 1 through 20, anybody that was on that other part of the pay scale is getting only 2,100. Not everybody's getting 3,800.
Over 30 would get to 2,100. When we changed it from 20A, 20B, anyone that was
Right, but there
over 30.
are all those teachers that were already off the scale
Gets 2,100.
Gets 2,100, so that
Mhm.
should have been about 18 to 20 teachers,
Mhm.
right? Than everybody else, so out of our, so it's like 80 teachers.
Yeah,
Are
but
getting
I'm just
30.
trying to put it in simple terms, just to
Okay.
try to calculate. And of course, this is guessing on our staffing projections on there with everything, all the turnover and everything. And then the next biggest item as far as expenditure would be the increase in 3 full-time teachers that was approved. And that's salary and benefits with that, which would equal the 210,000. So
What do
that's the majority of the increase in the expenditures.
What do you budget for one workstation or one FTE?
We try, well, I put in the placeholder at 55,000.
Okay.
Try to bring them in at level 1.
Right.
But then I also have
I'm
to
just
factor
asking you
in
what your placeholder
a
is. Okay.
guesstimate as to are they gonna take single
Family
insurance versus
Right,
family
right,
insurance. So I try to put in 10 to 12,000 on that.
Okay.
So roughly 70,000 is a.
Yes,
So right there between the two is
that's your big.
600.
600,000.
simple math, 600,000 of your,
Right.
then everything else, increases in expenditures correspond to any kind of revenue increase if we have revenue increases.
And ultimately, our revenue's not increasing as high as what the salary in those FTEs are going up, so that would be the
If we look
major
at the
impact.
first line of revenue, getting back to my point that you're
Mhm.
disagreeing with, and I'm not gonna change my mind then, just so you know. We have the same discussion every year with your predecessor. Since the taxes aren't gonna change much between the 5/30 and the 6/30 one dates, we're showing the effect of the revenue to be an increase of $179,000, but in fact, it's gonna be an increase, assuming the actual's close to what it is, of over $400,000, right?
That's the 630 actual is 19194.
I didn't take a look at what was added today.
Yeah, no, it was added today.
So, with how you conceptually come on and compare budgets, in my mind, when the year's over, last year's budget's a useless piece of information. Every line item is different in actual versus what we budget, right?
Yes.
So if we're trying to tell the story is, what did we actually incur last year versus what we're budgeting for next year? So we need to have this updated to have the comparison of the actual to the next budget, so we see what we think we're changing for this year. And I've done this before, I request we get that as soon as it's available,
It
not
might
wait
be a
till
hidden
Friday
counter,
before.
it might be a hidden column in this, the worksheet you're working off of.
Okay.
Me and you can discuss it.
Yes.
So for example, Scott, on that first assumption, you have the actual for June 30th is at 19 million, and the public can see that. Marion, you may need to increase the size of that from, so that it's not, doesn't look like Braille dots. Keep going. Right, just move it over, I'm saying, to the,
You want to see the.
so I want to see the
four
numbers,
columns
Mayor.
of Keep going.
Keep going, other way.
To the right.
There you go. So right now, Scott, you're comparing, for the effect, you did actuals minus from the FY18 budget. So it's 179. If you
Yeah.
did the actuals, or if we did, you went from budget 17, and you said, from the difference to budget 18.
Mhm.
If you did actuals, it's a difference of 258 instead of 179.
Yeah. Yes.
And the
So-
other reason it's important is because if that's right, well, I shouldn't say if it's right. So we came in almost $100,000 under budget on our real estate taxes this year, right?
It was pretty close, but almost.
Well, $100,000, that's a lot of money for us.
It is.
So we need to know how we were actual versus estimated, so we have a good handle of how we do it for next year, right?
Mm-hmm.
So does the rest of the board agree with Tim's request that they would like to see budget versus actual instead of budget versus budget?
Yeah, I think it's important. I mean, you could look at what you budgeted for state there, and
So
you're
what-
showing some major increases in revenue.
So we'll change that column so the formula addresses the difference. So I'm gonna change where it says effect, it will say budget versus actual, different budget versus actual.
So I mean. if
Then
you
again,
just-
I'm anticipating you're gonna, once you get clarity over our state budget, I wish you well.
Yes,
You're
there's
gonna come
a
back
lot of
on-
things that are gonna be impacted. Obviously, we don't know what the general state aid formula is gonna be. It is up in limbo. Roughly.
Because that bill has not passed yet, right?
No, it has not.
He has not signed
So
the Senate
we
bill.
do not know exactly what it's gonna be.
But it's
There is-
that's not favorable to our district anyways, is it?
I thought we
We kind of break even, but I thought it was a little.
we're not losing, I don't.
I don't think we would
I don't think
lose, but I don't know
anybody
if we're gonna
loses.
gain
Yeah.
on that. So what's in the current general state aid is 90% of what last year's projection was. I'm taking a conservative approach to it until
All right.
more clarity is through with the state.
So what I'm hoping over the next 2 months, because technically the board approves the tentative budget tonight, and then we could always make changes to this. We present any changes to the board that we made in the next month in August, and those changes are still then viewable to the public for another 30 days till the board approves this at the September meeting. What I'm hoping by the September meeting is we have clarity on state aid and categoricals, so that if that deficit can come down a little bit, those are some immediate areas that we can address. The only other area to possibly address the deficit would be the second line item under significant revenue assumptions. We paid $158,000 roughly in tax refunds. We've always have budgeted roughly about 4.25. We know we have at least 170 still pending with different tax appeals from large entities like the country club, some businesses that are still out there. And this does not take into account residential tax appeals. So my thought on that is if we know we have 170, if we did double of that, 340, we could possibly lower this close to $70,000 or $80,000, which would help cut into that deficit a little bit.
But is this a reassessment year?
I thought last year was a reassessment.
this year.
It is this year.
Because if it's a reassessment year, we could probably expect that there might be
More
more.
appeals.
More appeals.
More
than
appeals.
prior year.
But that
doesn't affect.
that impacts
that's-
future year.
Yeah.
So
and it's-
that'd be 2 years from now then?
No,
Right.
it really, they're appealing the increase in the assessment
Right.
from what they had before. So they'll appeal it, it might lower their future assessment, but
Right.
chances are it's not going to lower their assessment lower than what it was already. So we haven't seen the impact of the new assessment, and the appeals will lower what it would have been, but it'll still be greater than what it is now. Right, Gary? Isn't that
I'm
right?
pretty sure you're right.
So my thought is that would be one area I can adjust for August if the board wants to see that.
We want to get it as accurate as possible, I think. And again, just going back to make my point, if you just look at the two line items in that chart, the state and the real estate taxes, your column shows we're going to have a 250,000 roughly increase, and in actually, we're having about a 250,000 reduction versus what the actual was last year, right? It's going to be in the other direction.
Right?
So that's why I can't put my hands around myself a thorough analysis on this until I see how you're comparing your future projections against what we actually did this year. So, and again, Kevin, I would ask that if you can, if it's done in the next week or two, that you just send it to the board so we have more time to look at it than just the weekend before the meeting.
Right, but I mean, tonight we need to
Yeah.
approve it.
Right.
But I mean, we can make the changes you want to see tonight
Okay.
and post it on the website, where we just change the column.
Oh, okay. That's
And then
fine.
it's out there to the public.
That would be
like
better, I guess.
The point of the matter is roughly, the board is basically in concept approving this tentative budget.
Yeah.
As far as tweaks to one line item or formatting, like going budget versus actual compared to budget versus budget, Scott can do that after tonight and post that publicly. And the
You've
board
told
can
us
see it.
before, we don't have any restrictions on what we change.
This is, this
until
is a
the
working
hearing.
tool
It's a
until
working
we
tool
have
for
the
the next
hearing.
60 days till we have the
Right.
So this is out there for people to see if they want to come to the board meetings to identify a line item that they're concerned about or an expenditure they're concerned about, they're free to come and discuss it, but then you at least have it published out there for the
Yep.
people to see. We're still working on it. and refining it. But it's out there for the public to start seeing what we're using as a framework for our tool. So do we need a resolution?
Yeah.
Well, can I-
So somebody-
Well, there were
I
some
got it.
questions submitted.
All right.
Yeah, and I'd like to go through it too, and just kind of, for the new board members with it, just to clarify some stuff. Obviously, it's a work in progress, you know, it's always changing with it. On the revenue side, the big, you know, obviously the big things are the general state aid. I'm gonna look at special education, transportation, because the actual came in quite a bit lower than what was budgeted on that. I know that was an issue with one board member that submitted a question. It didn't look correct on it. So I'm still cross-referencing the numbers, obviously.
The federal.
Yes.
The federal
that's another
was
one, too.
budgeted.
I'm looking at the transportation reimbursement for it, plus then also our federal funds for reimbursement for room and board. I have not received an answer from our cooperative on where that federal comes from. It was budgeted for $85,000 and we received $200,000. So there is a big difference on the revenue there. I want to kind of compare to see where did that actually come from. And I have not gotten an answer as to what is the formula they use to calculate the proration for us. So I will look at that one and try to adjust it as best accordingly on that federal education reimbursement one that's out there. The life safety, depending on what we do, this budget would probably have to be amended later on with, you know, with the, whatever happens with the life safety,
Bonds.
with the bonds. So that would be a whole other process that we have to go through down the road. As far as expenditures that are out there, the big thing that we did was, which looks kind of weird, is took and made different accounts for all the different departments and turned them into board accounts. Previously, they were going into student activity accounts. So each department now has a department account which accounts for the student fees that are being collected for the registration. So you'll see in there, there is department, or supplies, department, supplies, student. The supplies student goes strictly towards the consumables that go towards the class. The department stuff is for the actual staff members and what they need to work within their department, just to clarify that. Athletic departments, you'll see no budget items under dues and fees, paid service, and supplies. All that was moved to the athletic office to basically have our coaches put in requests to work within a dollar amount. It's going to be up to the athletic directors to prioritize and work with the coaches to determine what will be purchased as far as supplies. Same thing with what tournaments they're going into for the dues and fees, and then also how many games they play is the paid service for the referees. That's a shift, so you will see that in the athletic area where it'll be all zeroed out on that, those columns. Let's see here. I reflected the,
Scott, I mean, was Mr. Smithing, a lot of your questions were student supplies and athletic offices, why there were zeros.
Yeah.
So that should address, that assumption should address that.
That's where I was looking.
and I know this year, the LADSI purchase service was under budgeted significantly. This has been revised and modified, and I've been working with LADSI. The estimate that is out there is very, very close to what our cost will be for our purchase service contract through LADSI, and that's any needs that we have to fill within our building that we can't do internally. We purchase the service through our special education co-op. Electricity and natural gas, I solicited our companies and had them run me an estimate for the annual costs. Pretty much what came back is what's budgeted out there. So I'm trying to get this as close as possible to what I think the costs are. Big cost that is really difficult to anticipate is our insurance cost. I know overall our medical went up 5% between our HMO and our PPO combined. And with open enrollment, people change from single to family, so you're trying to capture the best that you can. New employees come on, I don't know if they're gonna take single or family, so costs do fluctuate a little bit on that. So I'm trying to get the best estimate as to what I believe our actual cost will be for the medical. Obviously, that will change as our staffing changes and different enrollment periods go with what insurance they pick. But these will all be monitored and tracked and brought back, and I want to make sure that this is as close as estimate as I can get to for this FY18 budget.
Scott, just why don't you touch on some of the general questions?
Okay. As far as the assumptions that are out there,
I think your assumption explanation covered most of those questions. I'm talking like, when was submitted about the 4,500 for the state police?
oh, that's one.
That's not
That's
on the
later on for the
budget.
board bills.
Oh, that's for the,
That's not
for
part of
the
the
bills,
budget.
okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Some of the ones were like textbooks, why is it going up? When we're trying to go more to the one-to-one initiative. We still have to pay for the license for a lot of the online textbooks. So even though we're going to the one-to-one, they still get you with the licensing on it.
Was that one, did you ask that question?
Mr.
Mike?
Scott did.
You know, we, every year they present a budget, a 3-year budget for us, projection on textbooks and licenses, and then they refine it for the current year. So when would you do that, Kristen, about February?
Yes.
In February, she had a presentation for what she thinks we need to replace old books or whatever for next year, and the board approved the textbook budget, so it should be matching what we approved. Right?
Exactly.
Okay. It was
And then
before
it
you
has
got
a
here.
little-
No, that was more just a question of
Yeah.
understanding how it worked, you know?
And I always add a little bit, not knowing how many transfers are gonna come in with it. Sometimes we get a huge slew of transfers, depending on when CPS starts with it. So we try to build a little bit in there, just in case we have to get some extra licenses or additional books with it. I moved the instructional software from our general instruction into the technology department, just so it can be overseen by our tech director. That's any additional instructional software that's used in any department with it. There is an increase from last year on that one of roughly 20,000. But as you go to the one-to-one initiative, in order to keep up with that, you have to be more innovative and try new things. So some of these things that are put out there are a classroom license versus an all-school license. You do a pilot first to see if it actually works, and if it works and it's successful, then next year we recommend that you put in for the full site license for the department or for the school. There were questions submitted on the real estate calculation. Just if you could go to that tax calculation on 110, I'll go through that and how I got the projections. These projections are based on the levy extensions from the county. So the first column that says 2016 levy, that's what our levy extension is through the county. In order to calculate what you're going to get prior year and current year, you actually have to look at multiple levy years. So second column is tax extension levy 15 at 55%. And then you take our extension from 16 minus the difference. So our August collection is where it says August is anticipated to be there, and it's prorated at 98% for collection, which would get us the column that's expected at 98.5. And then the 2016 levy, that is the first column at 55% for each fund that's out there, and then it's prorated at 98%, and that's how I come up with the calculation for our tax collection.
But the question I asked was, isn't the first one 55% of the prior years and the next one the difference?
Yes,
The two assessments in the same year aren't 55% of anything, right?
that is correct.
So, but your spreadsheet shows you did 55% for both of them.
Yes, that is correct with it though.
It looks like it's 110% then.
Right?
Let me ask it again, because you said, yes, that's correct, to two different, to the same thing. One assessment each year is 55% of the prior year, right?
Yes.
The second is the difference to meet the total, right? So why do we have 55% for both assessment periods on the spreadsheet?
Because the second half would be the remainder, which should roughly be your 45%.
Right, why do you have
Let's say
55?
55% of both of them, that's the question I'm asking.
So do you,
Is it a catching
are the
of any
dates
of
the
the
correct
lost?
dates? You have a March 17th and 2 columns.
Mm-hmm.
Is one a March 18th?
No, that,
You have March 18th.
expected March 18th, yeah, the 55, yes, the column that says 2016 levy at 55 March, it should be 18. And then it says expected in March of 18.
Okay, so
85%.
for fiscal year, budget year, should I be looking at column August of 17
So
plus?
you're looking at August 17th, that would be your, that's our prior year.
So that's 45, that's what I'm gonna get in August of
Yep,
17,
that's
so
our
I'm gonna get
August
the
collection.
45%.
That's a second assessment for that year,
Yes.
right?
So I'm gonna
that's
get
not
four-
55.
No,
I'm gonna get
that's-
45% because I'm taking column 16 million minus the 9 million to get to
Mhm.
7 million.
Right.
That's what, so I'm
That's what-
budgeting the 7 million plus the 9 million, which,
The 8.9.
8.9, because you gotta reduce it down to what you expect your collection to be,
Mhm.
all right?
Right.
To get to
To equal our
16.2.
So all you should do is just highlight those
So
two
what you should do
columns.
is, yeah, show the columns
So
you're
it shows
adding
that's
up
how
with
you're
what
getting
we
your
budgeted.
taxes for the
Taxes.
budget.
Okay.
Because it is kind of confusing to see the 55,
And you could, if you wanted to, you could put in parentheses above the August,
and then make that March,
remaining 45%.
45%.
yeah, make that March 18th,
Okay.
all right?
But that's just how you get it.
All right.
Let's see here, budget questions.
This is what I told you.
Nothing out of the, nothing in regards to the actual budget questions with the restaurant bills.
Okay,
All right, can
so,
we get a,
any other questions on budget? Everybody was good?
I won't ask a question, but I'm going to make a comment. I already talked to Kevin about it. The thing that I think we need to look the closest at is, and he brought one or two of them up, how did we do actual versus budget for last year, which we have in your monthly report, and how we should adapt that into the budget? Because if you go back, every year we underestimate revenues and overestimate expenses. And that's why I highlighted on here, we're, between the two of them, we're $400,000 above and a positive on our budget, but we're showing what, a roughly 600, what's our deficit that we're showing?
About 550.
550. Well, if we're underestimate revenues and overestimate expenses every year, can we be a little tighter, and then we don't have to say we have a 550 deficit if we really think it's going to be 150,000 at the end of the year?
Mhm.
That's one thing that I think we should take a close look at between now and finalizing the budget.
Okay. And there is, like you said, like I said earlier, there is a lot of stuff that's still up in the air.
For next year.
For next year.
I understand.
And that deficit.
And maybe that's a
could
reason.
definitely-
You want to be conservative because you don't know what the state's going to come up. If that's the
Mhm.
reason, that's the reason. But I think we should have that, and you should say that part of the discussion rather than just go through the road. Here was last year's, here's this year's, we're raising it. And again, we're going to have, at the end of the year, we're going to be $400,000 more positive than what we're telling people we are. I don't think we should do that on an annual basis.
We should try to get, I think by lowering those property, that's a big
well, I mean, the
number.
big variance we've had each year is the fact that we don't budget 600,000 of appeals.
Right, we budgeted
We've been doing
420,
that
we
now
budgeted
for-
424, and we came in at 156.
Right.
I mean, last
That's
year was the
250
first year we
right
cut it
there.
down a little bit, but I
Right.
think prior to that, we were always,
So the property tax appeals have been big. Because if you think about it, we're still delinquent on a couple $100,000 from the state in their categoricals.
right.
Right.
So we budgeted 625, we're supposed to get 625, we've
But
only
we
collected
always,
3 some.
But isn't there always a catch up in the following year?
You hope so.
You hope.
Yeah, but I mean, so far, that's what's been happening, right?
Yeah, you usually receive a payment,
Yeah, so,
one
you
additional
know,
in the next fiscal year.
which we wound up showing.
What Scott and I have started to do is try to make a little short list of, here's items we think we could possibly either reduce or increase to help address the deficit. But I will say to the board, the best practice is still underestimate on revenues and overestimate on expenditures.
Why is
So
it a
we're not-
best practice?
Well, I think you'd want to be prepared for worst case scenario, not best case scenario.
I would
We don't
not
have a
describe
credit
that as I think being accurate is a best practice.
Well, if I could see what the state's gonna pay, I mean, that would be, I think I wouldn't, I'd be down in Springfield, I wouldn't be at RB, right? So I make.
Maybe, might be safer here.
We try to be as accurate as we can with some moving targets.
You want me to read the resolution, Gary?
Please. Wait,
Resolve- you want
can
to-
I just ask something else?
I'm sorry, John.
I mean, I'm trying to get a handle on this, and I've been doing this for 8 years, and it's still confusing to me the way it's presented, partly because you're in the trees, and I'm like on the balcony looking down on the forest. I mean, I totally agree with what you said. It makes sense to, if you're going to budget, it's got to be based on it. And I had this discussion 3 years ago, I remember. Why don't we, to me, it's common sense, it should be based on what the actual expenditure was. Why are we comparing the two? And the other thing is, when you have two columns, budget 17, actual 17, I mean, there should be a difference right there, because you're making me in my head do a calculation. It's silly. There should be a separate column of net. Okay, you might have done that initially in your report earlier, but I mean, I'd like to see it here. So that's just a comment. And there's one thing I'd like to do, Kevin, this shouldn't be too difficult at all. And this goes along with your point, Tim. If we can just go back, 5 years or whatever, budget fiscal year, what's the net income, actual net income in that same year, and what's the delta? And that'd be two things. We can show actually what our net income's been for the last 5 years, and you can see we've been basically at a balanced budget.
We did that on the spreadsheet.
It
There's
is?
additional
Yes.
spreadsheet
Yeah.
that I worked on from 2010 to 2000.
Okay, I
It
didn't
doesn't
see
say-
that.
Hold on. Listen to the question he's asking. Your spreadsheet does not show what he's asking.
Well,
You're just showing the actual, how the change was every year. He's asking you, which is what I did, is show for each year, what was the budget, what was the actual, what was the difference. So
Yeah,
just
so-
make sure, you do have an additional
Right.
spreadsheet,
It's
but
there.
it doesn't do what he.
Right, so I'm trying to condense the thing to like one page, whatever, so we can, there it is. And then you can go backwards to figure it out.
But what is the purpose of having a historical budget, 5-year budget?
Because it tells us
Well,
how
it tells us
off we
trends.
are every
Yeah.
year.
No, the actual tells you the trend, budgets don't tell you the trend.
No,
Actuals tell you the trend.
What I'm looking at that one you had where you do all the years from 2010 to 16, you don't have 17, you don't have the budget.
Right, I mean, he's got to put that in there, he's got to add that in there.
it says, waiting for the actual.
Gary,
So we had the actuals.
the budget to actual decides whether the best practice is the best practice. What, if every year we're underestimating our revenues by $250,000 and we're overestimating our expenses by $250,000, even as the numbers are changing, we keep doing that. This best practice we have makes us show our deficit at the beginning of the year is $500,000 greater than we really think it's going to be at the end of the year. That's what my concern was. That's been my concern.
All right, let's address a couple questions. The actuals weren't supposed to be submitted until August, because we got them from the treasurer, so they put in extra time on Friday to dump them in the budget so that the board could see them this weekend, so the spreadsheet.
Well, wait a
Okay,
second,
that
the
makes-
actuals should be available when they're available. If it's busy at this time of year, it's busy at this time of year. The board only meets once a month now.
All right, let me finish. When this was presented to the board in June, you had it with the May 30, and you had a month to look at it.
Right.
We have to wait for the township treasurer to close it, then somebody hand enters it into our budget. So if we get it on Thursday morning and the board packet goes out Thursday evening because of vacations and things like that, you won't get it, you were supposed to not get it till August. We were gonna update it from the July meeting to the August or shortly after that. We were gonna get it to the board with the June 30 actuals. So Wes was asking why the spreadsheet wasn't updated with the actual. That will be updated this week. So you'll have, that will be updated online, so you can see that to the budget.
With the budget on it.
Tim was asking why the assumptions don't compare budget to actual. But if you look at the actual budget, there are multiple columns that compare budget versus actual. The last two columns
The numbers.
prepare budget of 18 versus 17 actual, either the increase or the decrease, and the percentage change. So that was already implemented when you asked that from last year. If you look at the actual budget, like I'm looking at page just general 118, it's got, the first column is actual for 630, final budget, then it got the 18 budget, then it gives you all the differences, budget versus budget, budget versus actual.
What page on?
118 starts on the expenditure
Expenditures.
side.
So actually, it's giving,
It's not on the assumption.
it's just not on the assumptions, but the entire budget was done, so it's, you can see budget versus actual.
Well, I probably didn't go that far because it didn't start it at the top and I wasn't going to read the whole thing to figure it out. It's not, they're all not like that.
That-
Right.
That's the revenue side. When you look at maybe the.
Well, you have to
The
read through
revenue
about
is
10
not done
pages
that
where
way.
it
It's the
wasn't done that
expenditure
way.
side. The revenue is
I
not
read
done
through
that
the
way.
expenditure, you didn't do it that way, I stopped looking at the report. I didn't go to say, oh, well, I didn't think we were doing section of the report with a different format.
So Scott, we have to figure out why your revenue side didn't show the same thing the expenditure side did, because you have then budget versus actual.
Okay.
When we probably could eliminate the budget versus budget, because it sounds like the board doesn't want it.
I agree.
So although Tim beat you up there for 5 minutes, you did, I'll take 2.5 minutes of it back. Because you did half of it right. So you gotta fix the revenue
Yeah,
side,
but doing
okay?
half of the,
He's
at the
gotta
bottom
fix-
end of a report is not, let me just tell you, as a board member, I start at the beginning, if I get the points that aren't right or don't make sense, I'm not gonna read through the rest of the 50 pages to see if it gets better.
So we gotta fix the revenue side. And then you could we'll fix the assumption side, so it's
Yeah,
budget
I'll
versus
add,
actual.
Actual just versus budget.
Right.
Get
So
rid of
from
budget
what I'm
versus
hearing from the
budget.
board tonight,
So here's,
we wanna eliminate this budget versus budget, because no one cares. Because what I don't want is next year when we're doing a budget, John to lean over, take off his glasses and say, it would really help me to see budget versus budget.
I
Here's-
never,
here's-
I have
wanna
never
make
said.
sure.
no,
that.
here's.
Just wanna make sure I got
No,
four
no,
board
because-
members there
No,
saying,
no,
"Oh,
because
well."
here's my dilemma with this, if you don't include that. So let's take state aid. You only received $433,000 this year. And you had a budget of $625 last year. You're budgeting $625 again this year. Say they got their act together. You're actually gonna get $800,000 this year.
Well, yes.
Because you had the shortfall from last year plus the 625 that you calculated based on the state aid formula. So all of a sudden now, should we be budgeting 800,000? Or should we budget the 625?
You budget 625,
You know, that's the question.
because the auditor, right?
My only concern is it kind of defeats the process of meeting with every department, going through what they think are priorities, what are needs, and sitting down and actually going through it with them.
But
Why
see,
does it
that's, but
defeat
that's,
that
but
process?
that's, but wait a second.
But that would eliminate if I just do, you know, if you're just doing actuals, I might as well wait till the actuals come in and just say.
No, not
No,
at all.
you're doing, look, what you're doing with them is great. I'm sure it's great. I'm talking about as a board member, looking at this, trying to figure it out, okay? And I have a problem when I see $500,000 of loss. I have a real problem with that. So I want to be able to understand this in a historical perspective, and is it meaningful? Okay? That's where I'm coming from. What you're doing day to day with the budget, I understand that, but see, Kevin, you know what I'm saying?
Yep, we're good.
Yeah.
All that we
I
need-
would not, some people want to see budget first budgeted. In my mind, it's a secondary determination. The actual versus budget is the primary determination, because that's what really happened versus here. But I agree with Gary. And I think that's why it's set up this way. Sometimes when you're looking at, you're seeing, well, how did we compare the budget to the budget? What really changed there? I don't think you need to change the format of the report. I just think it needs to be filled the way that.
You gotta
for
do the
whole thing.
revenues.
You
need
gotta
to
have,
do
you gotta have
revenues
both,
like
you gotta have
expenditures.
both in there, you gotta have both the variances in there.
We're okay.
It's important to see actual, probably more driven from the expenditure side. On the revenue side, you know, the loosey-goosiness of the state, the timing of payments on that, we just need to see why, you know, if there's a shortfall from past year, to understand that it potentially could be put in next year, or potentially we're gonna still have that timing issue, who knows? But it's, you know, I think it's important that you see both.
Just do the revenue side exactly like you did the expenditure side. And I bet you the columns are there, they're just hidden in the worksheet that you've been doing. So it shouldn't be a big adjustment. You know, all we have to do is adjust the assumptions. The spreadsheet that the Finance Council asked us to do, I think once you see the FY17 actuals and FY18 budget, that should give you like a trend then of what's been going on here since 2010.
And the reason why you did that summary sheet up above is to try to highlight the major points. And the first question I asked was, what's driving the $500,000 deficit? And you pointed directly to two items: additional staffing and a increase in payroll. Those are greater than CPI, which we're typically in the revenue side getting. We're keeping state flat from a budget standpoint, and the property taxes are only increasing at a, what was it last year? 0.7. Right. And yet we're 600, what was that, between the staffing increase and the
It's roughly 600.
yeah. And everything else, expenditure-wise, we're arguing is staying at CPI, theoretically. I mean, if you, top of your head, okay.
All right, so just so the board understands, and Tim likes to see one thing's one way, John wants to see one thing the other way. So usually the reason why I kind of bring it back to the whole board is so that we're not creating 7 individualized.
John asked for the exact same thing I asked for.
I'd like, can you give me just, what I'm saying is I just want to make sure
You know,
for
and
the majority of the board.
I think it's fair to hear from the new board members if what they had problems with and what they would like to see, if there's some changes on what they're doing.
Well, I think when I, you know, and I put in a lot of questions, but I like that you gave me the history on this one. I didn't have that last time.
Right.
So you know, that's really what I was looking for.
Okay.
Is that history, the trends, right? Because I don't necessarily know those trends. I haven't been around 6 years. So
Right.
I was like, where is it? So that was one of the things that I wanted. I was fine with I understood why the effect was the first budget, because the actual wasn't done. Right? I get that. But I didn't know where it was last year. So that's why I was like, if I had a 16, then I would know where it ended up after 2 months or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I could see where things trend at the end of the year. All of a sudden you have a big bill for this or not for this or whatever.
I don't know, I guess I feel silly now that I printed out like the last 4 or 5 years that were on the website, and I had it all laid out, and I guess I don't have to do that because you guys are like, no, and.
Oh, it's there. It was there. It just was on the back page.
Okay, well, I'm good. I got it all figured out. I mean,
there
not
you
all
go.
figured out, but I made it work for me for what I needed to do for my brain, so I'm good.
Yeah, I understand it. Like, I didn't have any problems with it. I'm sorry. I know, I'm sorry. Makes sense.
I'm good. Don't lose any columns, Scott. You can always add, don't lose any. Don't ever delete a column.
Want me to read the resolution?
Yeah, let's get, let's.
Resolved that the Board of Education Township High School District 208, Cook County, Illinois hereby approves and adopts the budget containing estimates of amounts available in each fund as a tentative budget for said school district for the fiscal year 2017-18, and be it further resolved that this tentative budget following adoption by this Board of Education shall be made conveniently available to the public for inspection for at least 30 days prior to final adoption thereof at the September 12, 2017 board meeting.
Do we have a second?
Second.
When will we get the budget out on the website? Probably.
Once these changes.
Within a week or so?
End of the week.
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Towner?
Yes.
Mr. Welch?
Yes.
Ms. Ruska?
Yes.
Dr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Rich?
Yes. So this budget's going to be going around for several months, so if there are concerned taxpayers who want to come in and discuss it.
Be on the webpage, it's posted as a tentative budget as well.
And we have 2 more meetings before?
Yes.
We have the.
No, we have one.
One meeting, and then we'll have the
Then you'll have the
actual
public hearing.
but they can,
Out there
taxpayers
publicly
could come
for-
in ahead of time if they have issues.
Out there publicly for close to 60 days.
Good.
July till September.
Great.